Hey everyone, welcome back to the Odin Leather Goods workshop. Today I'm going to make a purse, or actually a backpack for my daughter. Last Christmas season, I think it was Christmas Eve 2018, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I made this purse for my then 6-year-old daughter. It was a highlight of her Christmas. She really loved it. She uses it almost every day. It was intended to be a little bag for her to put her Barbies and just trinkets in. She loves to carry around little toys with her everywhere she goes, and she loves to have a big girl purse. And so I made this for her, which is probably one of only several purses I've ever made. This year, she's a year older, and she usually wants to carry around what is a hand-me-down iPad. And so I thought I would kind of start a trend of making her something every Christmas. So this year, instead of making a purse, we're going to make kind of a mini backpack for her. It'll be about the same width, but a little bit taller, and I think she's going to love it. She's really excited about it. So let's get started. Okay, so before we start filming today, I did take a few minutes to kind of lay out a pattern for this. Again, it's going to be based on the same width as the purse I made for her last year, just a bit taller. She really loves these snap locks here, so we did incorporate that into the design because she wants quick access to her stuff. She didn't want to mess with a buckle. For being 7 years old, she really has a concept of what she likes and what she doesn't like. So loves the leather, wants the same type of lock, but just wants it a little bigger. This morning, I made these patterns out of regular dollar store cardboard. There's nothing special about it. You see I made my marks on there. I usually will sketch something up on my iPad in the paper app or on the Procreate app, and then once I'm kind of generally happy with the shape, I will then start laying it out on paper. If this is something that I'm going to make over and over again in the future, I actually would then turn this into an acrylic pattern that I could then cut out on a laser machine and then use repeatedly. This right now was going to be the first time we've ever done this, so we may be a little off here and there, so having it in paper is just perfect for this type of application. The parts of the bag are going to include a front panel, a rear panel, a flap, a front pocket that will go on top of the front panel, and then of course several of these little straps to hold D-rings and things like that, and of course the gusset. I didn't make a pattern for the gusset. I don't think that's really necessary. I know I want my gusset to be 3 inches wide, and it's just going to be strapped. The trick for figuring out how big and how long it is, I'm sure there's some really fancy math you can do to figure that out, but for me, I do it very simply by taking one of the panels that I've already cut, and I'm just going to put it on the edge and I'm going to roll it like this. That pretty much tells me that about right here is how long I need the gusset to be. It's not a perfect science, but it gets me close enough and I'm happy with that. So let me mark this one in all. Let's do it one more time, just make sure we're close on it. You leave myself a little room. I can always trim it back once I start stitching. If I was making production bags, I would not settle for close enough. I'd want it to be spot on so we don't waste any leather. But in this case, close enough is going to be fine. So I left myself a little bit, about 1.25 inches here, 1.25 inches there. Gives me a little room to play with. And our mark is there. We know we're going to do 3 inches down. So there's 3 inches there. And I'm not going to worry about scratching a line. I'm just going to cut using my long ruler here. That saves me a little bit of time. All right. So I'm going to cut this part off. All right, so there's my gusset. It's pretty thick. This is probably a 5-ounce leather or something like that. But what we'll do is, before we get ready to stitch, we will send this through the belt skiver and thin out the edges quite a bit to make it much easier to stow. So there's part number 1. Let's see what else we can cut out. so let's lay this out to make sure we're making the most of our side of leather, our big parts at least. There's some scratches here. I want to see if those are, yeah, those are pretty deep, so I'm going to try to work around those. Don't want to include those in the bag. Other scratches, some of them I'll leave, as long as they're not going to jeopardize the integrity of the bag. So now also, because I know part of the front panel is going to be covered, I wouldn't mind a few more bug bites and stuff in here, but on the back panel it's going to be very, very visible. So that's the kind of stuff I like to plan around. And I think that's all the pieces. Let's see. Top flap, handle, front pocket, front panel, back panel, D-ring straps. I think that's it. And the gusset, of course. Yeah, good start. We'll straighten some of this up and we'll move to the other table. So now that we have our pieces cut, the next thing we're going to do is start to trim them out a little bit. Some of the edges we know are going to need to be beveled before we assemble. We won't be able to reach them later, so we'll start doing that now. Let's grab an edge beveler here. This is an edge beveler from Ron's Tools. It's really good beveler. I'm just going to knock off that hard edge of the flap all the way around. Make a little leather spaghetti here. You also can see maybe on the camera that the remainder of that silver ink is now being beveled off. So again, not something we really need to worry about. We'll also do the backside. This gives the leather a really good feel in hand. With your hand doesn't feel like a 90-degree cut. Instead, your hand would just feel the rounded edge that we're putting on now. So now the next step is for us to go in and burnish some of these edges. Burnishing basically just seals these edges, makes them nice and smooth. My daughter most likely is going to beat the snot out of this bag, which is exactly what she should be doing to it. So we're not gonna stress about the edges too much, but we do want to give them a nice little polish and burnish before we go much further. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to grab a solution of Tokonol. Tokonol is a burnishing agent, and I'm going to grab a wooden burnisher here. We're just going to have a seat and get after it. All right, here we go. So let's refer back to our pattern quickly. The front panel is here. All right, so on my pattern, I marked out that the pocket's gonna be 2 inches from the bottom and 1.5 inches from each side. So let's position that. Now we're going to make life a little easier for ourselves. I'm gonna go ahead and mark our stitch line on here now, and I'm gonna use double-sided tape to attach this to the panel. Here we go. This is a nice thin 1/8 inch thick double-sided tape. Before I do that, I'm going to go and mark my stitch line. This is a pair of wing dividers, and it just lets me scratch a line on the top surface here that tells me where my stitches are going to go once I get to the sewing machine. Cool. Then we'll take some tape. And this tape will be strong enough to just hold it in place for us while we stitch while we top stitch it to the front panel. You don't want it moving around on us. And it's thin enough where it won't interfere with our stitches much. Okay. Alright. So let's add our hardware, first person hardware to this now. I like to collect all my hardware for each project in one place before I get started. That keeps me a little bit more organized. This hardware just screws in, but to make sure my daughter didn't have any problems with it for years, I'm going to put a little Loctite on those as well. Just do a little dab of Loctite. You don't want to get Loctite on the leather. It only requires just a touch of it. Not much at all. We'll let that dry for a second. And actually, let's go ahead and put Loctite on this hardware as well, because we know we'll have to do that at some point. Might as well do it now and let it all dry at the same time. That's all we need there. Perfect. Alright, so once we apply that, even though it has threads on it, it should be very, very difficult for the threads to come apart. And we'll let that sit for a moment before we apply it. And while that's sitting there, we'll mark out where our pocket's going to go. So we know it's going to be 2 inches from the bottom. So what I'll do is, my top panel's in place. We're going to leave that where it is. Move that out the way. It's 2 inches from the bottom, no problem there. I'm going to put a weight on this now so that it doesn't move. You can never have enough straight edges and rulers in a workshop. There's 1.5 inches from the edge there. I'm going to put a weight on that. What that means is once this pocket goes on, it should be positioned perfectly. And just to make sure, I'm going to measure this one. It's a little more than 1.5 inches, so we'll adjust. It's 1 5/8 is what it looks like. So somewhere along the way we gained about 1/8 of an inch. That's all right, we'll adjust. So now, once we get our hardware applied, peel the tape off and plop it down. It'll be perfectly positioned exactly where we want it. So, let's do that with our hardware now. Let's start it. Put the second one on. Get it started. And then I'm going to grab my non-marring pliers. I don't want to mar the finish on these studs here. We'll hold them in place here. And we will tighten down all the way on the back. That's not coming off anytime soon. Got a little background noise there. Perfect. There we go. All right, so now we can peel off the tape. Make sure that tape is pressed down really well. That piece is ready to stitch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put the rear panel and flat portion together. To make sure I line it right, I'm going to go back to my pattern and I'm going to mark these holes here, which I hadn't originally planned on doing, but now that we're in this, it seems like it makes more sense to go ahead and mark it. So I can use this straight edge to make sure the tops are aligned properly. And we'll just use a hole punch here. Mark those holes easily. All right, there we go. Now I'll use the same hole punch to punch those out. Hit that a little harder. That hole punch is a little dull. Okay, so with that in place, I can take some of my solid brass rivets here, need 4 of them for this portion, put them on, and we'll use these to help position the flap in the right place. There we go. That's going to be great. So now that's in the right place, I'm going to take my scratch awl. I'm very lightly going to scratch a line around the outside of this, and then we're going to apply some glue here just to make sure that these two pieces stay together. And I'm angling my scratch awl in a little bit just so that we don't see the mark once it's all put together. There we go. All right. So now we can go apply some glue. Take these rivets out. So we're going to apply, this is a water-based contact cement. Before I apply, I'm going to rough up the surface a tad. This leather's kind of smooth, so we're going to rough up the surface just a little bit, just to make sure the glue sticks well. Just a little bit. And that should be enough there. Let's make sure. So let's apply glue to this side. This water-based contact cement I really like. I've been using it for a few years now. It doesn't have any fumes, which I really prefer. Some of the other contact cements that are used more traditionally with leather crafts are really bad for your health. Their fumes are just, I'm having flashbacks of using the fumey stuff. Really bad for you, especially in these closed environments without a lot of ventilation. I found that this water-based cement works as well, if not better, believe it or not, than the solvent-based stuff with all the fumes. But the most important thing is that without the fumes, I can use it and I have to worry about ventilation and all those other kind of things. It just works really well. We just kind of slop the glue on there. It doesn't have to be perfect because the rivets is really what's going to hold it together. We'll give that a moment to dry, to set up. And usually with this glue, you don't even need to apply it to both sides. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't. In this case, I'm not, because I'm going to be positioning it using these rivets instead. So once we, let's see. Not what I wanted, but I can clean that up. Got a little glue on the surface there. That's okay. Wasn't being careful enough. What I'll do is once this dries, I'll go back with my rubber eraser there, and I'll remove that glue from the surface. So just to be aware, when you're using contact cements, you got to make sure that everything is cleared out with those holes. So what happens as I push the rivet through the hole, it pushes the glue up through it as well. So that's not exactly what you want. But in this case, we'll be fine. Things that you learn when you work on projects and new designs is order of operations and things to be careful of as you go. So, perfect. Just get rid of some of that excess. There you go. See? That comes right off. Ready? Perfect. All right, we'll wait for that part to dry before we try to get that part off. Okay. But while we wait, what we can do is we can go ahead and put our caps on our rivets. But to do that first, we need to install our handle. Our handle is going to go here. Our handle is also going to help hold on the D-rings for the backpack top. Right, so I'll show you how that works. This is our hardware for that. This hardware is going to go right in between, like that. Now that the glue is set up a little bit, we're going to start assembling things. I think in this bag we'll be able to assemble both sides first completely, and then take it over to the sewing machine and stitch it all at one time. So let's see how that goes.
There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sing on a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
So we got it done. Here's the backpack. Here's the original purse that we kind of based this off of. You can see it's pretty much the same size and width, just a little larger. I think my daughter's really going to love it. It's a little large for her, but good thing about kids is they will grow into it. So I'm pretty happy with it. If we make it again, we'll probably make a few changes and we'll clean up some of the stitching areas, things like that. But overall, for the very first backpack we've made and the very first time we've made this design, I think it came out really, really great. I appreciate you joining us today. I appreciate you looking at the videos. When you get a chance to look at some other videos that I think are going to be linked here on your right-hand side, my left-hand side. And stick with us. We'll have more videos coming out real soon.